all the kids are doing it, you know.
I've done some.
Sure.
At the beginning of the lecture, there was a incident a couple of years back. A friend came up to ask me for some help, and I don't know what she was talking about, but she led me to one of the kind of like in Chinle, you know, where the bridge is.
Yeah.
Because she had a friend that was debating to drink. It was like the hard whiskey stuff.
Oh.
And as I got closer and closer to it, I noticed that her belly was big.
Yeah.
And as I always got there, she was already started
no.
downing the whole thing down.
She
She cleared that whole bottle by the time I got there. And the next day, we called the cops, or we called the cops, ambulance, everything.
Sure.
And the Baldwins and the gas station that came over. And she was already off somewhere.
Yeah.
And ambulance came. Next day, I ran into her friend again and asked her once, and they lost the baby.
Oh,
she was ready to have the baby.
That's just sad.
One of the saddest.
Well, what can you do?
Yeah.
I mean,
It was over a guy.
of
The
course.
guy left her.
Well, men are the worst. That's a, and probably it was the guy's kid. Okay, well, we won't go into that. It's not fair. It's not fair. Men impregnate women. It happens. It's happened once or twice. And then she's got to stay sober for the next 9 months, and he can just drink himself to death if he wants.
And then I have
It just doesn't seem fair.
I have another friend I grew up with, and she went off to college, and I think halfway through her trimester, she found out she was pregnant. The baby came out deficient. Yeah. They said the baby would last like about 6 years, and she's grown. She's an adult now.
She made it then.
Yeah.
Okay.
With complications.
Well, I'm going to show you what it looks like when women drink during pregnancy. What happens to the baby? We're going to talk about that right now. Alcohol consumption during pregnancy can cause 3 varying degrees of problems. Fetal alcohol syndrome is one of them, of course. It's the one that's the best known. The individual has retarded growth. They have facial deformities, problems with heart and limbs, central nervous system involvement, potentially lowered IQ with a range for somewhere between 20 and 120, and a mean of 79. 79 is just north of intellectually disabled. Alcohol-related neurodevelopmental disorders is another one, and the other one is alcohol-related birth defects, ARBD. It all depends on what you drink as to what the problem will be. If you drink through your entire pregnancy, FAS is potentially what will happen, but if you drink at certain times during your pregnancy, ARND is more likely, or ARBD, and we'll talk about why that is in just a second. All 3 of these problems are referred to as fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, and that's what it looks like. This is a normal baby on the left. This is a baby who is FAS. Was exposed to alcohol. As you can see, there's a vast difference between the 2 brains. This one is far more complex than this one is. This is the corpus callosum right here. This is the connector between the two hemispheres of the brain. And as you can see, this baby doesn't even have one. It's more or less non-existent. This is what a baby's brain looks like during autopsy. This is a normal baby, and of course this is an FAS baby. As you can see, there are facial deformities as well. Lots of developmental problems. As I said before, alcohol has an affinity for brain tissue, but it especially has an affinity for a fetus's brain tissue. I was working at, where was I? St. Joseph Hospital in Omaha. And they were the Boys Town Institute. We're working with FAS. They had just discovered this. The FAS was not really diagnosed. They didn't begin diagnosing it until the 1980s. And I was there from 87 through 90. And they were working on FAS. They were trying to figure out what was going on. They first discovered it on the Rosebud Reservation, sadly enough. And they were dealing with Native Americans living in northern Nebraska, northeastern Nebraska. They have the Ho-Chunker over there and the Teton Sioux are over there. And they were working with those individuals, trying to figure out why FAS and why it was affecting American Indians more than it was affecting anybody else. And one of the things, and of course in the beginning they thought it was just a problem with American Indians. If they had seen any other incidents of it, they assumed it was something else. It wasn't alcohol. So if they saw it in an African American, they thought it was something else. And if they saw it in a Caucasian, they thought it was something else. But since they discovered it on the Rosebud Reservation, they thought it was an American Indian problem. They started doing research at Boys Town Institute, and what they determined was, no, this isn't, all of these cases of mental retardation that we have seen in the past, this doesn't have anything to do with a genetic problem. This has to do with alcohol. They discovered it because of discovering it on the Rosebud Reservation. A child who suffers from the less severe forms of FASD, ARND, or ARBD may have an IQ ranging from 49 to 142 with a mean score of 90. Though they will have other problems, they will have difficulty with their short-term memory. They'll have problems storing and retrieving information. They'll have difficulty forming links and making associations. They'll have problems making judgments and forming relationships, difficulty controlling their temper and aggression. They tend to be oversensitive to bright light, loud noises, sharp smells, and textures and tastes of food, so they can only eat certain foods. This is very similar to the problem with people who smoke a lot of pot during their pregnancy. We get exactly the same types of situation, but of course it hasn't been identified yet. That's going to be in the future. Worldwide FAS rates range from 0.33 to 2.9 cases per 1,000 births, though the figures vary by country and the use of alcohol. Not all countries use alcohol. Some countries, the males drink, but the females don't drink. It's really kind of an interesting process of looking at this. In the United States, the rates are 0.2 to 1.5 per 1,000 births. Asians and whites have 1 to 2 per 1,000 births. African Americans 6 out of 1,000 births. American Indians, depending on the tribe, 10 to 120 per 1,000. Depending, of course, on the region and the tribe. The people in the Northern Plains Indians drink more than other tribes, so they have some pretty abysmal rates. So if you go into North Dakota, eastern Montana, the rates are just ridiculously high. And of course, South Dakota with the Cheyenne River Reservation and the Rosebud Reservation. The incidence of ARND and ARBD are about 3 times that of FAS in all groups in the United States. So we see this very frequently, unfortunately. The most destructive time to consume alcohol for the fetus is the 3rd week through the 8th week of gestation, when the brain is forming. The problem is, of course, the 3rd week after she has become pregnant, she doesn't even know she's pregnant yet. Potentially, she doesn't know she's pregnant yet. Of course, by the 8th week, this is 2 months into the pregnancy, she's probably aware that she is pregnant at that point. At this point, the corpus callosum is forming. The basal ganglia is forming. Of course, the basal ganglia is part of the reptilian brain. It's the center of the brain. Brain cell migration and organization are taking place, and this is one of the reasons why it is so destructive. Because if it interferes with cell migration and organization, there is no organization. During the second trimester, the facial features are forming and can be deformed by alcohol use. During the third trimester, the hippocampus is forming, which might impair the encoding of visual and auditory information. And that will make the individual look seem as if they have autism, because they won't be able to identify facial features, other people's facial features, and they won't pay attention to them. The most destructive period of drinking for the fetus is to drink in a rapid manner. And this is, of course, the method that is used in the northern plains. They tend to be binge drinkers, so they will start drinking on Friday night and they won't stop until Sunday. Now, they will abstain all week, but then come Friday, they're getting drunk. They're drinking the bottle of whiskey. Yeah, just like you were saying. She downed that whole bottle of whiskey. From the time that she left her to the time that you got back to see her, she downed that whole bottle of whiskey. Yeah, they're drinking in a rapid manner, and of course this binge drinking pattern is very destructive as far as the baby is concerned. Now remember, the baby, the alcohol goes right into the baby. It goes right into your blood stream, and the baby is getting all of its nutrition from the bloodstream. So if she drinks a lot of alcohol and is inebriated for an extended length of time with high levels of alcohol, the baby's drunk at the same time. Baby has exactly the same amount of alcohol that she does, and of course she weighs 130, 140 pounds, and the baby, of course, only weighs a pound, 2 pounds, and so. I mean, the difference between the two is the amount of alcohol in the baby's system is much more destructive to the baby than it is to the mother. It is a concentration that is destructive, and drinking in that manner intensifies the concentration, of course. Studies have shown that 7 drinks per week is the minimum baseline for negative neurobehavioral effects. But if the mother is consuming all of their alcohol in a binge pattern, the pattern becomes more important than the volume. So if you drink 7 drinks at one sitting, then the baby is becoming highly inebriated, and it's destroying brain cells at the same time. During the growth period, alcohol contact for 4 hours is enough to kill brain cells, of course. And as we know, if we all took 5 shots of tequila right now, we would be inebriated the most at 90 minutes after we drank the alcohol. So this is staying in the mother's system for an extended length of time. If you drink 1 ounce of alcohol, it takes you 3 hours to metabolize it out of your system. If she's drinking a lot more than 1 ounce, then it's going to take her hours, and it only takes 4 hours to destroy brain cells. Of course, this is research coming out of Boys Town Institute in Omaha. The only logical drinking pattern for a pregnant woman, of course, is total abstinence. That's logical. Of course, the problem is if she's with an individual, a male that is a drinker, then possibly she will drink along with him. And it's not fair, but it's just the way it works, I guess. Alcoholic fathers can also transmit mutated genes in their sperm due to the consumption of alcohol. While this can't lead to FAS, male children can suffer from other intellectual and functional deficits, impaired verbal skills, impaired thinking processes, impaired planning skills, problems with visual spatial skills, problems with motor skills, memory deficits, learning impairment, and that can be due to the mutated genes from the alcohol in the sperm of the father. So if the mother doesn't drink and the father is an alcoholic, there's still a possibility that the baby will be affected by the mutated genes. Alcohol interferes with the main inhibitory neurotransmitter in the brain, GABA, which reduces inhibitions. People with pre-existing aggressive tendencies will become more aggressive with the use of alcohol. And this is something that you have to think about when you go to the bar. Maybe you're not going to be the one that's drinking, or maybe you're not going to be the one that's drunk, but you're around a lot of people that potentially are more aggressive than they need to be. 30% of the victims, that's one of the reasons why I stay out of bars. Of course, I don't drink at all, but one of the reasons I don't go with my friends to the bars is because, doggone it, I'm always the one that people pick on. Francis thinks it's funny. It turns, I was thinking about this the other day. Turns out I have big feet, so I'm really hard to knock off my feet. You have to knock me off my feet in order for me to fall down. So it gets kind of interesting. You know, playing sports, people just can't knock me down because my feet are too big.
I've seen a lot of bar fights, and it is true. It's like the smallest ones.
It's always the little guy that's on the bottom, isn't it? It's always the biggest guy and the littlest guy that are fighting, and it's not the little guy that picked the fight. He's just trying to talk his way out of it. And not lose face, you know, it's kind of tough. Anyway, sadly enough, 30% of the victims of violent crimes report that the perpetrator had been drinking alcohol before the offense. 15% of robberies, 26% of aggravated assaults, 50% of homicides. And it's mainly because, remember that inhibition thing that alcohol takes away? Normally you would talk yourself out of being so stupid, but alcohol makes you dumber than you would like to be. When arrested, alcohol levels of probationers was 0.18. You remember 0.08 is drunk as far as driving is concerned, so this is more than twice the legal limit. When arrested, alcohol levels of local jail inmates was 0.20, where that's 2.5 times drunk. When arrested, alcohol levels of state prisoners was 0.28, which is 3.5 times the legal limit. Oh, goody, okay. In a study from Memphis, Tennessee of domestic violence calls, 92% of the perpetrators had consumed alcohol the day of the disturbance. 67% of the perpetrators had used cocaine the day of the disturbance. Half had used alcohol and or cocaine often during the last 30 days. So what's the problem here? Alcohol and cocaine cause people to be aggressive. That's the bottom line. Alcohol encourages the release of pent-up anger and hatred and desires that are normally controlled by society. The drunk's moral judgment and reasoning are impaired by the alcohol. I think I've told you the story that when my wife drinks, then all of a sudden I become an asshole. I'm the biggest jerk in the world. As strange as that may seem, I'm okay as long as she's not drinking. It's just when she's been drinking that I turn bad. Now that may have something to do with this, with the idea that she's not saying anything while she's sober, and then she gets a little alcohol in her gullet, and all of a sudden I turn bad. I try to be the same person all the time, okay? She gets drunk and I start sneaking around with my teeth get long and my fingernails get longer. 34 to 74% of perpetrators of sexual assault had been drinking before the assault. Once again, this has to do with the inhibitions. Their inhibitions are controlling their behavior, and when they drink, of course, those inhibitions go away, and now all of a sudden they're more likely to try to sexually assault somebody. 30 to 79% of the victims of sexual assault had been drinking prior to the assault. Same situation. Before, of course, she could fight off the individual. Afterwards, after she's been drinking, of course, she's not as physically functional as she was before. In 2005, 40% of the motor vehicle fatalities involved alcohol, 16,885, that's 16,885 deaths. 90% of these situations involved a blood alcohol test level of higher than 0.08 milligrams percent. 275,000 injuries occurred at the same time. However, an aggressive advertising campaign and more aggressive sentencing for DUI infractions has reduced the traffic fatalities by 18%. If you've ever driven on 40 going to Albuquerque, there's a lot of signs that talk about DUI. We need to end driving while intoxicated, DWIs. We need to end that. DWI end, I think is what they call it. Anyway, and there's a bunch of them between here and Window Rock and Gallup. Lots of signs that warn you about DWIs. We're trying to cut down on the DWIs. How stupid can you be? Well, pretty damn stupid, I guess. 1 in 4 drunks drive within 2 hours of their last drink. People don't understand when they are drunk. They think that they're just as sober as they were before. But we all know in here, we've taken this class, that 90 minutes after your last drink is when you are the drunkest. So at 2 hours, you're pretty snockered. You're still pretty snockered. On any given weekday night between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m., 1 out of every 13 drivers is legally drunk. On weekend mornings, 1 to 6 a.m., 1 to 7 drivers is drunk. Very dangerous. Out on the highway. I was living in Montana. Our dean of students had 2 sons. One of her sons was out drinking and driving. The guy in front of him was going slower than this guy wanted to go. He's going about 80 miles. This is in Montana, where the speed limit on any highway is 70 miles an hour. Okay, so he was going about 80, 85 miles an hour, and the guy in front of him was going 70. And so he didn't hit the guy in front of him didn't hit his brakes. He didn't see him. He slammed into the back of him. There were 3 people in the car. He killed the 2 people in the front, and the person in the back seat was knocked sideways. And they survived because the seat folded up on top of him. He killed 2 people because he was driving and drinking, or drinking and driving. Actually, he left the party, and they made him stay there for like an hour after he stopped drinking, and then they let him in his car, and he killed those 2 people. He's in prison right now for vehicular manslaughter, and he'll be in prison for another 15 years. He was 23 years old, had just gotten out of the Army. And he's going to be in jail until he's 45 years old. That was a couple of years ago. Anyway, and it was 3 o'clock in the morning. You don't think that somebody's going to ram you from behind when you're driving home, but that's exactly what happened. This guy was going pretty good. I mean, he was going 70 miles an hour. And the other guy hit him at 80, 85 miles an hour, just blasted him right in the back. The guy in front was in a car. He was in a pickup truck, the guy that hit him. It was a jacked up pickup truck with a great big bumper, nice big Dodge Ram. His mother had just bought him. Anyway, 2 dead people. But that was 3 o'clock in the morning. So it's kind of dangerous driving at 3 o'clock in the morning, especially on the weekends. Of convicted DUI perpetrators, 61% drank beer only, 2% drank wine only, 18% drank liquor only, 20% mixed their drinks, and of course you can drink, what do? You drink whiskey with a beer chaser, which sounds kind of stupid. It also sounds like a belly bomb that you're going to be vomiting up fairly quickly, but that's what people drink, as stupid as that sounds. 61% drink beer only. I've worked in the emergency room. We always ask people how many drinks they had when they come in inebriated, and they all will tell you that they only had a couple. The reality is they drank 3 or 4 and then they lost count after that. So, I mean, 3 or 4 is a couple, isn't it? Okay, but then they lost count after that. Who knows how much they were drinking. They certainly are urinating a lot. Sometimes without the benefit of the bathroom, so that's always fun. Alcohol-related crashes cost an estimated $148 billion in the United States every year. Blood alcohol of 0.08 is the legal limit for driving under the influence in all states except for Utah. Utah's legal limit is 0.04. So Utah has changed their law. They just changed it in the last election. So, and it went into effect in January. So if you're drinking and driving in Utah, half a beer is going to make you drunk enough for them to arrest you. Just something that you need to think about if you're ever driving and drinking. It is estimated that only one driver is arrested for every 300 to 1,000 drunk driving trips, and that's probably fairly true, especially on the res. Geez, you guys got no cops at all. I've seen like 5 while I've been here, and I've been here for 3 years. I don't know where they are. Where are they? Are they all in Tuba City? There's nobody in Window Rock, that's for sure. Actually, that's where I saw people, between Window Rock and Navajo. They were stopping people on that road. I don't know what the speed limit was, 55. Right, like anybody drives. What has worked over the years to reduce traffic deaths due to alcohol? One of them was lowering the legal inebriation levels from 0.10 to 0.08. 0.10 is 1.5 beers. 0.08 is 1 beer. That's enough alcohol to make you, give you a blood alcohol 0.08. Imposing immediate license revocation for individuals whose blood alcohol levels exceed the legal limit. Just revoke their license. In other words, seize their license as soon as you catch them driving drunk, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, I'm sorry. I know they need to get home, but I don't want them running into me. By golly. I'm sorry that they're drunk. It's not my fault, but they need to stop driving. What a great idea. Increasing the legal drinking age from 18 to 21. Of course, this is done back during the Carter administration. Jimmy Carter forced all the states to accept 21 as a legal drinking age. At that time, about 1/3 of the states in the United States, the legal drinking age was 18. I think that's the legal drinking age in New Mexico before Carter. The only state that refused to do that was Louisiana. Of course, Louisiana did it because of Mardi Gras. They made so much money off of Mardi Gras, they decided that they would rather not accept the road repair money that Carter was threatening them with, just to keep their drinking age at 18. Eventually they changed. They did change their drinking age. Maintaining zero tolerance for youth under 21 who are caught DUI. This has reduced crashes involving youths by 17 to 50%, depending on the state. Impounding or towing vehicles of DUIs and charging them, the individual, for the tow. Requiring mandatory treatment for DUI arrestees. DRAM laws, those who serve are liable for a customer who becomes intoxicated. My son was a bartender for forever. My goodness, the poor kid. And he would never serve somebody who was so drunk that they slurred their words. He counted drinks for people, and he thought it was a logical law, but of course there is no DRAM law in California, where he did most of his bartending. But some states, of course, have DRAM laws. 22 states have DRAM laws. 14 have limited DRAM laws. Iowa and Illinois are 2 of those states. That's where I was when I was teaching at Ashford We were right on the Illinois border in Iowa, and so both of them had dram laws, which is kind of cool. Can't argue with dram laws. Medical reports involving alcohol, 15 to 25% of emergency room patients reported the use of alcohol, especially those involved in fights, assaults, and falls. It makes you not be able to walk very well, unfortunately. Alcoholics are 16 times more likely to die in falls and 10 times more likely to be burned or die in a fire. Usually they're smoking a cigarette and they pass out and they drop the cigarette on whatever, themselves or the bedding, and the bedding catches fire and they burn themselves to death. 31% of boating fatalities had a blood alcohol level of 0.10 or more. There was a famous baseball player that was killed in a boating accident a couple of years ago. He played for the Marlins and he was out drinking and boating, and they hit a rock and all three of them were killed. They all had very high blood alcohol levels, much higher than 0.10. 40% of industrial fatalities and 47% of injuries involve alcohol. Alcoholics commit suicide at twice the rate of the general population. This is what the individual looks like that is committing suicide. They're white, they're male, they're middle-aged, they're unmarried, and they have a long history of drinking. So they look like some of the characters you see on television, white, middle-aged, unmarried males who've been drinking for a long time. Culture determines how an individual will consume alcohol. Wet cultures such as Austria, Belgium, France, Italy, and Switzerland sanction daily use of alcohol. There's a reason why the middle of Europe drink so much alcohol. It's because their water is contaminated and they can't drink the water. So they have grown up drinking alcohol. Alcohol in all of their, in any of their drinking liquids. So even the kids drink alcohol. And they train them to drink alcohol. So they use alcohol daily. They integrate social drinking into everyday life. Legal drinking age in all those countries is 16. So you start at age 16, you can go to the bar and quaff a liter of beer if you like. They serve watered down wine to children with meals. They drink more beer and wine than dry cultures do, of course. Austria, Belgium, France, Italy, and Switzerland. These are the countries that are wet cultures. Dry cultures such as they have in Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden restrict alcohol use with heavy taxing. They consume more distilled spirits. They don't drink that much beer. Beer is heavily taxed, and for that reason, of course, they drink heavier alcohol, liquor, as it were. They're characterized by binge drinking, particularly males on the weekend, of course. Mixed cultures such as that in Canada, England, Germany, Ireland, and the United States demonstrate patterns of binge drinking. They have a higher incidence of violence to women than either of the wet or dry cultures. Surprisingly enough, if we look at the United States and domestic violence in the United States, and we look at domestic violence in Canada, we see a lot more domestic violence in Canada. Everybody's shocked by that because Canadians, they're really polite people, but that doesn't mean when they go home they're still polite. There's a lot more domestic violence up in Canada than in the United States, as shocking as that is. Russia has had an alcohol-soaked culture for 500 years. Vodka is traditionally drunk between meals in large quantities. They drink vodka like Americans drink beer. They don't drink shots. They drink highball glasses full of alcohol, which is about 3 or 4 shots. A form of prohibition that started in 1985 resulted in illegal manufacture and 11,000 alcohol poisoning deaths. This is in 1985, before the Soviet Union collapsed. The male life expectancy actually rose in Russia during the Prohibition period. They were having problems in the Soviet Union, and they decided that if they reduced the amount of alcohol that men could drink, that it would improve things. And it did. The life expectancy of males actually went up. As soon as Prohibition ended, as soon as the Soviet Union collapsed in 1989, as soon as Prohibition went away, alcohol poisonings increased to 40,000 per year. They were still bootlegging alcohol. Male life expectancy dropped by 6 years in 1 year because the males were drinking so much alcohol. It dropped by 6 years. Life expectancy dropped by 6 years. In 1 year.
How long was the prohibition in Russia?
I'm sorry?
How long was the prohibition in Russia?
4 years.
4 years.
4 years. And life expectancy actually rose, not by a whole lot. But then Prohibition went away, and all these guys got drunk, real drunk, over an extended period of time. And life expectancy dropped by 6 years in 1 year. That is amazing. It's like they went to war, and they started executing people in the street. Their life expectancy dropped by 6 years in 1 year. My God. In England, 70% of the population drinks regularly. 2/3 of the consumption of alcohol is in the form of beer, usually warm. The darts, they play darts a lot in England. Anyway, the beer's a lot stronger than it is in the United States. It's almost all dark beer. It's porter. If you have any idea what that shit tastes like, it is so nasty. I can't believe those people drink that stuff. Imagine if you grabbed a bottle of milk and it was half rotten, and you warmed it up a little bit, and that's what porter tastes like. I don't believe those people drink it. Recent attempts, that Guinness, I don't know, Guinness is a dark beer too. It tastes just as bad. I can't believe those people drink so much. Recent attempts to curb the destruction of alcohol in the British public has been in the form of prohibiting happy hours. Happy hour used to start like at 2 o'clock. Well, it was at 4 o'clock. It's always started at 4 o'clock. And it ended at like 11. So, I mean, these guys were real happy for a really long period of time. Allowing the pubs to stay open past 11 p.m. To reduce the need for binge drinking. And of course, happy hour started at 4 and it ended at 11. Then they had to close the pub. So they had to drink a lot. They had to get all their drinking in that 5-hour period. And you remember, 90 minutes after you consume your last drink is when you're the drunkest. So these people were walking around and all of a sudden, they couldn't find their feet. Encouraging the English to reduce average consumption to 3 drinks per day. And we're talking about liters of beer. So this is 3 liters of beer a day. And it's that porter stuff, and it's about 12% alcohol. It's pretty strong stuff. On the average, men drink more per drinking episode than women do. Men also tend to have more adverse social and legal effects from the alcohol than women do. Women tend to increase their drinking after they pass 30 years of age. Even when they are dependent on alcohol, women drink 1/3 less than men who are dependent on alcohol. Hereditary factors seem to be stronger in women when it comes to alcohol. Female alcoholics have 50 to 100% higher death rates than male alcoholics. They have more cirrhosis of the liver, more circulatory disorders, more suicides, more accidents. The younger an individual starts using alcohol or tobacco, the more likely they will have a problem with a substance later in life. 6.2% of 8th graders have been drunk in the past month. 8th graders? How old are 8th graders? 14. 14-year-olds. Jeez. 6.2%. 18.8% of 10th graders have been drunk in the past month. 30% of 12th graders have been drunk in the past month. The immaturity of the adolescent brain can lead to unwise decisions. When disinhibiting factors of alcohol are thrown into the mix, the individual is more likely to drive and drink. They're more likely to have sex and, of course, get impregnated. There's more likely to be sexual aggression. If a woman is going to be sexually assaulted, she's more likely to be sexually assaulted while she's in high school than any other time in her life. As stupid as that sounds. And we still have 35-year-old men that are cruising the junior high schools looking for a date. It happens, unfortunately. Drinking during adolescence leads to limited emotional growth. When you start drinking, if you start drinking at 14, your brain doesn't mature. It's going to stay 14 until you stop drinking and allow your brain to mature. That's just the way it works. I didn't make that up. Damn it. It's just the way it works. So if you've got a guy that's been drinking since he was 12, his brain is still 12 years old. And he's gonna act like a 12-year-old. He's gonna think fart jokes are the funniest things in the whole wide world. Because that's the way 13-year-old boys think. College students or adolescents into their junior year. 44% of our best and brightest admit to binge drinking. This is Harvard, Yale, wherever you want to go, Stanford, ASU. 44% of them are binge drinking. About half the binge drinking college students admit that their grades fall into the C or F range. When I started college in 1967, oh my God, it was so long ago. When I started college in 1967, we had a class of 258 at my school. A number of those guys drank every night and played cards all night long. That's a lot of drinking. That's also a lot of card playing. Of course, they were really good card players until they got really drunk, and then everybody lost. I don't know how that one figured out. Anyway, most of them flunked out of school. So we lost like 55, 56 kids right after our freshman year. They didn't make it to their sophomore year. And this is a small college, and so we ended up with about 189 people that graduated from our college because the rest of them drank themselves right out of school and played cards right out of school. Many also admit to missing class on a regular basis. I had a really good friend. He was my pal, and this guy never went to class. I couldn't figure it out. But he played cards and he drank all night long, which was kind of exciting. He left after the first semester. He flunked out of school his first semester. And he used to work at the radio station, and that's what he liked to do that. But he also flunked out of school his first semester. National studies showed a direct correlation between the number of drinks consumed per week and the individual's grade point average. I wasn't a very good student when I was in college, but at least I made it. And I made it 4 years. Women are more sensitive to the deleterious effects of alcohol on their grades, so it's probably a little more foolish for women to drink than it is for men. 86% will show the same pattern of drinking that they developed in high school. So improving after high school is not very common. By graduation, the college-educated drink less than their non-college attending peers. Males binge more than females, 48.6% compared to 40.9%. 50.2% of white students binge as compared to 34.4% of Hispanic students, 26.2% of Asian students, and 21.7% of black students. Fraternity residents binge at 75.4%. My college was a fraternity college. 75% of all the students at my school were fraternity members. And they had some fairly notorious parties that I was never invited to for a couple different reasons. One, I'm really boring. I look like I'm 12 years. I looked like I was 12. So nobody wanted me there. They were afraid the cops would come. The dormitory residents binge at 45.3%. Off-campus residents binge at 54.5%. Married residents binge at 26.5%. College drinking leads to 1,700 deaths per year, 690,000 physical assaults, 599,000 injuries, and 97,000 sexual assaults. Of course, mine was an all-male college, so we didn't have hardly any sexual assaults at all. I wish, because women would come in for dates, and the sexual assault rate was fairly high, unfortunately. I got married when I was a sophomore. Intelligence about drinking doesn't increase with age. Stop. Okay. 2,500,000 Americans have alcohol-related problems as patterns develop sometimes as a pre-adolescent can continue into old age. Yeah, so however you drank as a pre-adolescent will continue. Can you see it? Okay, the problem with alcohol, it can deplete your bone density, especially in women who tend to be more susceptible to osteoporosis than men are. Women have monthly periods, and of course that thins their blood. It also thins their bones, unfortunately. The more babies they have, the more calcium they lose, especially if they didn't take their vitamins. The baby will suck that calcium right out of your bones. By golly, the baby will suck the calcium right out of your teeth. I know. Babies are like little parasites. Monsters. So you got to take your pills. If you don't take your pills, all this bad stuff can happen to you. The Germans say for every baby you have, you lose 2 teeth. That's what the Germans say. I know. These are big, husky women. And they're losing 2 teeth for every baby. So if you have a half a dozen babies, I know it's 12 empty spots in your mouth. Surprisingly, about 1/3 of all older people who drink didn't start until they were older. So this is something people do when they get unhappy. Asians and Pacific Islanders have the lowest alcohol consumption rate of any of the major racial or ethnic groups in the United States. 4% of the adult population are heavy consumers, but we understand why. They have a far more adverse reaction to alcohol than anybody else does. The 2 groups that drink the most among all the Asians and the Pacific Islanders are the Filipinos and Japanese Americans. Koreans have the highest number of abstainers. And curiously, the Koreans have a different religious structure than most of the other Asians. Japanese are Shinto and Buddhist. Chinese are Taoist and Buddhist. Koreans are Christian and Buddhist, as curious as that is. They have more Christians. And the form of Christianity are alcohol abstainers. A lot of Methodists, a lot of Seventh-day Adventists, they have their own churches also. But they're abstainers, and that's really kind of interesting. African Americans have the second lowest percentage of heavy drinkers in their population at 4.2% compared to whites at 7.4%. Only 40.8% of black males drink monthly compared to 56.5% of white males. As I've told you before, whites, the Caucasian population, the European Americans are professional drinkers, and they've been professional drinkers for thousands and thousands of years. We have found beer formulas in Egypt, in Mesopotamia. These guys have been drinking forever. That's why the Russians drink so much. They've been drinking a lot for 500 years. You guys have been drinking for maybe 400 years. And not all of you were drinkers. Yeah, sure. Spanish came over here, what, 500 years ago? Yeah, 500 years ago. Sure, that they did, but they were in South America and Central America primarily, hardly at all in North America. The tribes that lived on the northern plains, they didn't come in contact with Europeans until the 18th century, and probably the 19th century. the beginning of the 19th century. So you've got populations that have only been around alcohol for 200, 300 years. It's just the way it works. That's history. Oh, I hate history. Peak drinking seems to occur after the age of 30. Explanations for high levels of abstention among blacks may be that their long history of strong spirituality and matriarchal family structure has made them less likely to drink. But if you've ever been around African Americans to any extent, you know that they don't drink nearly as much as white people do. 8.1% of the Hispanic population consume alcohol at a heavy rate. Heavy alcohol use is highest among Mexican Americans. Did you see what Fox News did the other day? How stupid can you be? How many Mexican countries are there? Oh, I know. Yeah. Oh yeah, they're Mexican countries. Wait a minute, let me think a second. Only to idiots. Half. Ouch. Okay. Past month use runs about 46.7%. Binge drinking runs at 25.8%. 6.2% of Hispanics can be classified as alcohol dependent. They're still way behind white people at 7.4%. We're number one. American Indians, Alaska Natives have drinking rates that greatly vary by region of the country and tribal affiliations. The heaviest drinking appears to occur among the Northern Plains tribes. This goes back to the 1930s. Northern Plains tribes have always been heavy drinkers since they started looking at it. Southwestern tribes drink far less than the Northern Plains tribes. One of the 10 leading causes of death, 5 are directly connected to alcohol abuse. Unintentional injuries are number 3 among American Indians. Diabetes is number 4. Liver disease and cirrhosis is number 6. Suicide is number 8, and homicide is number 10 with American Indians and Alaska Natives. For American Indian Alaska Natives, alcohol-related motor vehicle deaths are 5.5 times higher than the general population. Cirrhosis of the liver is 4.5 times higher. Alcoholism is 3.8 times higher. Homicide is 2.8 times higher. Suicide is 2.3 times higher due to drinking of alcohol. And I apologize for all the noise. Wait a minute. So what's the next chapter? Do we get to talk about marijuana now? Is that the next chapter? I think so. Okay. All-arounders. Okay, the psychedelics. Oh, boy. Bang, bang, bang. Psychedelics, after a user's perceptions, alter the user's perceptions, whereby reason becomes unimportant. And intensified sensations create illusions, delusions, and hallucinations. Those are your psychedelics. There we go. Psychedelic fungi and plants have been used by humans since the Neanderthals. Amanita mushrooms have been used in India for 4,000 years. Belladonna has been used. Belladonna, since ancient Greece. Marijuana was stored in ancient China. I know these guys, okay? They're friends of mine. LSD in the form of rye fungus ergot was consumed in Renaissance Europe, not on purpose, of course. All kinds of interesting things happen. Psychedelics are readily used today in several forms and have waxed and waned in their popularity over the years. MDMA, 2.3% of high school seniors used it in 2000, 2.3%. By 2003, MDMA was down to 1.3%. So it's whatever's popular with the kids. And usually the kids follow whatever their rap, R&B, hip-hop singer is talking about. So if they're talking about smoking pot, they smoke pot. If they talk about MDMA, who was the one that was talking about MDMA? Was it Miley Cyrus? Was talking about, she sang several songs about MDMA. I think it was her. I don't think it was Taylor Swift. That doesn't sound like Taylor Swift. It sounds more like Miley Cyrus. Anyway, she was talking about ecstasy, and my God, ecstasy just exploded. You know, it's like an advertisement for illicit drugs. LSD, 4.0% of high school seniors used it in 1995. By 2006, only 0.6% used it. Why in the world did it go up and down like that? I mean, in only 10 years? Because it wasn't popular anymore. It wasn't cool to do it. And of course, only the cool kids are doing all of these drugs. And the more you listen to the music, the cooler you get, if you do what the songs tell you to do. Marijuana, 37.4% of high school seniors used it in 1979. 1 out of every 3, 1979. Of course, none of you are alive in 1979, so I guess that doesn't make any difference. But I was working in the emergency room in 1979. If you watch Fast Times at Ridgemont High, you think everybody and their cousin is smoking pot. And in 1979, that was true. 37.4% of high school seniors were smoking. But by 1992, it became less popular. Only 1 out of every 10 kids was smoking pot. 1 out of every 9 kids was smoking pot. 1 out of 3, 1 out of 9. And that was in a matter of, 15 years? By 1999, it had risen to 23.9%. Remember, adolescents are a bunch of sheep. They're lemmings. If somebody tells them to do something, they all want to do it. If people tell them to wear their underwear on their head, they do it because that is the cool thing to do. If people tell them to wear their pants way down on their hips so that they show off the tops of their boxers, they do it. This is these guys are lemmings. Adolescents, they're like robots following each other in lockstep. You don't believe it? 37.4% of high school seniors are smoking an illegal drug in 1979. By 1992, it was down to 11.9. 7 years later, it has doubled. By 2006, the percentage had gone down to 18.3% again because nobody was singing about it, so nobody was smoking pot. Marijuana is used the most among white people. It's used the least by black people. Now, if we remember, white people are drinkers and black people aren't. And here we have pot smokers, white people are pot smokers, and black people aren't. Once again, black people aren't pot smokers. Hispanics, used somewhere in between the other two groups. Psychedelics come in 5 chemical configurations. They come in indoles, phenylalkylamines, anticholinergics, cannabinoids and ketamines. The ketamines, PCP, salvia divinorum, which I have never seen before. Detromethorphan, of course, has to do with cough syrup. So these are the 5 forms of psychedelics that we're going to be dealing with. Peyote, the peyote ceremony, the Native American Church. It's a phenylalkylamine along with MDMA. Belladonna and datura, anticholinergics. The indoles are psilocybin, magic mushrooms, and LSD. And then, of course, marijuana. The effects of psychedelics is determined by the toxicity of the substance, the amount that is used, the user's experience with the drugs, the emotional makeup of the user, the mood and the mental state of the time of use, the pre-existing mental illnesses that the individual has. Pre-existing mental illnesses. This is really kind of interesting because the psychedelics, the hallucinogens, kick people into psychosis relatively frequently. So if you have a proclivity for psychosis, if you have a proclivity for a mental illness, these drugs will make it worse. They will force you, they will change your brain so that you will slip into psychosis or neuroses more readily. This is one of the problems, this is the real problem that they see with marijuana. If somebody has a proclivity for schizophrenia, they smoke pot at age 17, all of a sudden they start showing schizophrenic tendencies. They start having psychotic episodes. Is it because of the marijuana? What the marijuana has done, it has changed the structure of their brain at this stage. And since they had a proclivity for schizophrenia, now they slip into schizophrenia. Now they have a full-blown case of schizophrenia. They would potentially have, if they had stayed away from things that disrupt the brain, potentially they would have not developed schizophrenia at all. But because they have done this, now they're schizophrenic, unfortunately. So all of these things are quite important as far as psychedelics are concerned. Most hallucinogens stimulate the sympathetic nervous system, which results in a rising blood pressure and pulse. The individual tends to sweat. They have palpitations of the heart, and they develop nausea. So if they have a heart problem and they're smoking pot, potentially they'll have a heart attack and die. Same thing happens with LSD, same thing happens with MDMA, same thing happens with peyote. Of all of these, the substances that you can potentially take, peyote is the least addicting, as it turns out. You cannot overdose on marijuana. However, there have been 3 deaths due to marijuana consumption. That was just had to do with consumption. There was a 10-month-old baby whose mother and father were smokers. This is up in Colorado. The baby died of complications, and the complications were caused by the marijuana smoke. They were living in a motel room, and the baby was right there. And over an extended period of time, the baby was coming in contact with a lot of marijuana, secondhand marijuana smoke, and it caused the baby to have complications and die. So that's one case of a baby dying from marijuana, from smoking marijuana, from her parents smoking marijuana. Psychedelics interfere with select neurotransmitters, dopamine, norepinephrine, acetylcholine, anandamide, glutamate, alpha psychosin, but especially serotonin. Psychedelics affect serotonin. And remember, serotonin makes you happy. It's the stuff we give you. We give you Prozac in order to raise your serotonin level to make you happy. So that's what psychedelics do. So the idea should be that psychedelics are the most wonderful substance in the world. You smoke pot and you're happy. You take LSD and you're happy. You take MDMA and you're really happy. So maybe we should put this stuff in milk so that all the kids drink, and then they'll have a great day at school. They'll all be happy. They'll all be hugging each other. Won't that be great? How perfect is that? Well, the imperfect part of it is that your brain always wants to be normal. So if we upregulate the number of, if we overstimulate you with serotonin, then the neurons will have a downregulation of serotonin receptor sites. Now what happens when you're not smoking? When you're not smoking, and you don't have that influx of serotonin, all of a sudden you're more depressed than you were before. And if you've ever been around people that smoke a lot of pot, they're okay as long as they're smoking pot, but when they're not smoking pot, they're not kind of dark. They're real dark. Everything is boring. It is the most irritating thing in the world. Being around these people. Because as long as they're stoned, they're okay. But as soon as the pot wears off, they're not so pleasant to be around. They're not nearly as much fun. Stimulation. Psychedelics greatly affect mood because serotonin is amply represented in the limbic system. Stimulation is in the reticular formation in the brainstem, tends to overload the sensory pathways, making the user acutely aware of all sensations. Overstimulation of the visual and auditory centers may cause auditory stimulation to jump to the visual pathway so that music might be seen and sights such as colors may be heard, as bizarre as that is. My favorite is when they see something that's purple, they taste grapes. It's great. Or something that's red, they taste cherries. It's wonderful. Okay, anyway. This crossover sensation is known as synesthesia, and of course that's very common with people that are on psychedelics, especially LSD. An illusion is a mistaken perception of external stimuli. LSD and most of the psychedelics cause people to have illusions. A delusion is a mistaken idea. They'll be done as soon as class is over. Watch. A delusion is a mistaken idea or belief that cannot be swayed by reason or other contradictory evidence. LSD and most psychedelics cause delusions. Now this can be a problem, especially if the individual is paranoid. When they take LSD, they become more paranoid. They will have the delusion that they can fly. They had a dream one time that they were flying. So they'll go up to the top of a building and they'll jump off. And of course, instead of swooping around like a bird, they plummet to their death. And this happens this is not that uncommon for this to happen. A hallucination is a sensory experience that does not come from external stimuli, but is perceived as coming from an external stimuli. Mescaline, psilocybin, and PCP cause hallucinations, and of course that is the basic problem with PCP. PCP also makes you paranoid, and you think that everybody is trying to attack you. And people on PCP, of course, feel no pain, so you can cut their arm off, and they'll swing the stump at you. As stupid as that is. And we've seen this over and over again. I mean, sometimes they're beating this man to death, trying to keep him from attacking them, and they literally have to kill him to keep him from attacking. And that's people on PCP. This has happened over and over again. Policemen have been killed by these individuals. They'll break their arm and they're still hitting them with the broken arm because they feel no pain, and they're also extremely paranoid. Is it time yet? See, they're done. Oh, good. LSD, psilocybin, mushrooms, ibogaine, morning glory seeds, dimethyltryptamine, foxy, AMT, and ayahuasca are the indole psychedelics. These substances create mental interactions by inhabiting the serotonin receptor sites, especially the 5-HT2A sites. This affects your sleep, your mood, your anxiety level, and it can form hallucinations and illusions. Your anxiety level tends to increase, and this is not good. LSD, lysergic acid diethylmide, is also known as the sacrament. It's known as acid, of course, blotter, barrels, orange sunshine, illusion, and window pane. When I was, this is before I joined the military, I was substitute teaching, and I was substitute teaching at a school that was very close to where I lived. We had 2 girls that dropped acid before, I don't know when they dropped acid, because I was teaching phys ed that day, and they were supposed to run. Well, they forgot all the stuff that holds your chest in. Okay, so they didn't have brasiers on, and they took off their shirts while they were running. So these girls were running around the track topless, in essence. And they had on jeans. They were supposed to have on shorts, of course, but they had on jeans. And of course, I'm trying to control them. And then one of the girls just collapsed. She just collapsed. And the other girl's still running around, and she's sprinting, and she's bouncing all over the place. It was just not very attractive. Anyway, the girl that collapsed started foaming at the mouth, and nobody knew what was going on. It turned out that they had dropped window pane. Window pane is is LSD with rat poison. Now, why would you take rat poison? Why would you do that? LSD takes about 2 hours for it to kick in. But if you take it with rat poison, it kicks in in about 10 or 15 minutes. And for some reason, these 2 girls had dropped acid. So one of them's just sprinting around the track. It was a quarter-mile track. Finally, she collapses. The first girl's still foaming at the mouth. We called the paramedics. They came, took her to the hospital. She was dead. I mean, there was too much rat poison in the LSD, and she was a really skinny girl. The other girl was a little bit bigger, and she survived. But they took her to the hospital. She wasn't out for a week. Of course, the question came up, why didn't I know that they had dropped acid, window pane? How in the world am I supposed to know? It was one of those kind of deals. That was the last time I worked at that high school. But I only lost 1 student, so that's pretty good. Anyway, they took window pane. She was still alive when the paramedics picked her up. The other girl was in a coma. But she wasn't foaming at the mouth, and I guess that's what saved her. Anyway, it was really kind of bizarre. It was very strange. It was a very strange situation. My experience with window pane, not in the emergency room. What's happening? LSD is the semi-synthetic chemical compound found in the ergot fungus, found in some cereal grains, but especially in rye. So if you've ever been around wheat, or you've ever been around oats, or barley, a lot of times you'll see this stuff on there. It's one of the things that they have to clean off. They have to wash the grain before they can process it. Otherwise, this stuff gets into the flour. And of course, we haven't had a LSD scare since the 14th century. This substance was first isolated from the ergot fungus in 1938, and it was synthesized by a man by the name of Hoffman. LSD failed as a psychological enhancement substance in psychotherapy and as a treatment for alcoholism. They thought that they could do that. They could give these guys LSD and it would keep them from being alcoholics. There was one actor who was treated with LSD. He had anxiety. He had extreme anxiety, which was kind of odd because it was Cary Grant. And he was on LSD for about 3 years under his psychologist, his psychiatrist. And eventually he recovered from his anxiety, his violent anxiety attacks. Who do you think he was afraid of? Cary Grant. I don't know if do you know who Cary Grant is? Pretty man. Do you know who he was afraid of? Women. He was afraid of women. Women wouldn't leave him alone. He was scared of them because, well, he was scared of them. Anyway, eventually, of course, and he couldn't, he kept getting married, but he never had any children. And finally, after his LSD treatment in the 1960s, he got married and had a baby. His wife had a baby. LSD was purchased by the CIA and experimented with for its use as a truth drug or a mind control drug in a program referred to as MK Ultra. You may have heard of this. MK Ultra failed. They were going to spray it on troops to make them, space out, dude. Didn't work. They tried it in the Philadelphia subway system, and it didn't affect people at all. One of the CIA's researchers was Harvard professor Timothy Leary. Leary discovered its psychedelic properties by accident and then experimented on purpose. It was Leary who gave LSD to the rest of the world. Timothy Leary, 1958. What a jerk. LSD was made illegal in 1966. So from 1958, when Leary started handing it out to his friends, and 1966, for 8 years, it was legal. Okay, why don't we stop right here? We'll pick this up next time. We'll talk about the history of LSD, as much fun as that is. I won't tell you any more window pane stories. I did try to make those girls put their clothes back on. They wouldn't. I was afraid they'd take their pants off. Everybody was afraid, and everybody's laughing at them. And of course, the kids were trying to get them to, take it out, take it out. You know how kids are. You know how stupid kids are. Anyway, one of them died. Only one of them died. What is so bad? Worst things have happened. I got you. No, I got you. I got it.
Oh,
I already signed it.
I'm reading one of your discussions
Oh, no.
for social. You said your brother broke up with his wife and he did an online thing.
Yeah.
And he met a woman, but he ended up marrying his
The chaperone, the woman, yeah. And you know what their connection between the two of them was? 70s music. And so the whole time they're talking 70s music. And both of them were kind of metalheads, my brother and...
Was the lady mad when she...
Oh, yeah. Well, she's a country and western fan. Of course she was mad. I mean, it was in South Carolina. So they started out talking about, what's the group that sang Alabama?
Sweet Home Alabama?
Sweet Home Alabama. Yeah, that's who they started talking about. And then all of a sudden they started talking about the Allman Brothers Band. And, I mean, so they fell in love.